Well, going by my calculations, I'm almost completely caught up with Zelda!
I started this project over 2 years ago, and hopefully this year I'll be all caught up. Assuming Nintendo does release Breath of the Wild 2 this year. Here's hoping. The last Zelda game I reviewed was Phantom Hourglass, and this game is sort of a sequel to it. And by that I mean it basically maintains the mechanics of the previous game. I admit I didn't care much for Phantom Hourglass, but IG Enuma thought they had something going with it, so he wanted to return to a more land-based gameplay. Enuma was inspired by a picture book he would read his son for a bedtime story called The Tracks Go On. He liked the idea of laying tracks around Hyrule. Daiki Iwamoto returned to direct the game. One thing they wanted to place emphasis on was making Zelda actually accompany Link while still playing her usual role as a damsel in distress. We'll get into that. They wanted to find a good balance between player guidance and freedom. Did it work? Well, we'll go into that. Before I go into the plot, did you ever see that episode of the Zelda cartoon where Link gets turned into a ghost and accompanies Zelda while they go to get his body back? Same thing, but with the roles reversed. Kind of funny how that episode predicted the future. So nearly 100 years after the Phantom Hourglass, Link, Tetra, and the pirates founded a new land that we learned was once the epicenter of a massive battle between good and evil. I mean, ain't that always the way? The Demon King, Malus, who is not Ganon, despite pretty much being Ganon in everything but name, was sealed away. They have since named this land New Hyrule, even though the king said at the end of the Wind Waker that the land would not be Hyrule, but their land. But hey, we gotta go with what's marketable and familiar. We see Nico, the last survivor of the old pirate crew. That's sadly bittersweet. It's actually nice to have a Zelda game with a new Link and Zelda, but have an older character from a previous game. That's not something the series does often. But anyway, Link this time is an engineer in training. I suppose that's quite the career choice. Link has to go to the castle to get coordinated by Princess Zelda. I didn't know the princess had to oversee that. Seems like a rather mundane task for the princess to do. When Link sees Zelda, he blushes, which means they're laying on the Z-Link ship teases in this game. More than usual, anyway.
You're into shipping? Join the Navy!
Thank you. Anyway, Zelda slips Link a note saying she's suspicious of Chancellor Cole, her right-hand advisor, because seriously, look at the dude. He just screams, "I'm evil!" I'm glad this means that Zelda has common sense, unlike Terra from Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. We'll get to that soon. So Link helps Zelda sneak out of the palace. Brings back memories of A Link to the Past. But on the way they are ambushed by Cole and Byrne, and they basically kidnap Zelda. Link awakens but finds Zelda's spirit wandering the castle. It turns out only Link can see her, just like how Zelda could only see Link because she was in love with him. Wink, wink. Well, Zelda gives Link the Spirit Flute, which I'm going to have quite the words for when we cover the gameplay. So Link and Zelda go to the Tower of Spirits where they meet Anjean, who tells the dude that Cole intends to break the prison of Ganon, I mean Malladus, and will possess Zelda's body to do so. She takes it well. Of course, Zelda has all the restraint and dignity of a princess. Yes, some traditions are not meant to be broken. Truly so. It's actually funny. Zelda's body getting possessed or trying to be used for an evil purpose has become an unofficial tradition at this point, and the next game would explain why that is. But anyway, Anjean mentions that Link can't go alone,
so for the first time, Zelda will accompany Link on his adventure.
In a way. As it turns out, she can possess phantoms while in her ghost form, which I'll cover later. After gifting Link with a spirit train, Anjean holds off Byrne so Link and Zelda can begin their journey. From there on, Link and Zelda must travel to the basic temples and reawaken the spirit tracks. Thus it becomes a pretty standard Zelda story. Go to this place, get this part of the thing you need to beat the final boss, and so on and so forth. I must say it's a nice change of pace to have Zelda be Link's companion for the game. So let's talk about our leads for a quick second, shall we?
Link, our hero this time around, is an engineer in training. No matter how many times he reincarnates,
I guess he feels he has to have a career change. Like I said before, it's nice that Nico is implied to be his caretaker.
I guess something happened to Link's parents, as always. Or Nico remembers the hero wins and said, you know, I should look after this kid.
It would make sense. He definitely has the expressions of his Wind Waker counterpart down. I do appreciate when they give Link more defined characteristics. Zelda is portrayed as more of a normal girl who just happens to be a princess. It's an interesting take on Zelda's usual character, which is that she's usually stoic and dignified. She's written to be more comedic, and I really do love her and Link's interaction.
In fact, this is probably the most screen time that Zelda gets in a Zelda game, which is quite the surprise when you think about it. The story doesn't really pick up again until Link and Zelda encounter Byrne, who basically takes over as the rival. He's a former apprentice of Anjean turned evil, like Anakin from Star Wars. Anjean, however, doesn't seem as any worthy of being saved anymore. But after Link and Zelda defeat him, they go to the top and find Cole about to transfer Malladus into Zelda's body, but unfortunately they are unsuccessful, and for the second time in 3 years, an evil Demon King takes control over Zelda's body. I swear this happens a lot. Cole is a contrast to previous protagonists in the Wind Waker trilogy, as you could call it. Gandorf was a powerful magic knight, and Bellum was just an Eldritch abomination. Cole is a small demon who's completely smug and can't fight the heroes back himself, relying on others for power. Byrne is betrayed by Malladus and Cole and left to die, but Anjean comes to the rescue and we'll stop our story analysis here. I suppose what I enjoy about the story here is that Link and Zelda actually do feel like a genuine duo for once. Sure, they usually help each other out, but usually Zelda's assistant comes at the very end of the game while Link has to do all the heavy lifting. Here, Zelda actually gets to help out. Byrne is an interesting take on the rival character, in that he has an arc and develops, whereas in Twilight Princess, the Bulbin King's sudden turn comes at the very end, and rather unexpected since he didn't even talk for the majority of the game. I do wish we could have gotten more elaboration of Wind Waker, Link, and Tetra finding the new land of Hyrule, but I suppose that can be saved for a Lost Tales of Hyrule type of game. I can dream, can't I? The graphics are pretty much the same as they were in Phantom Hourglass, but a little cleaned up. By that I mean the models are less blocky than they were in Phantom Hourglass. The music is charming. I particularly like the music while you're on the train. It's so peaceful until the evil trains come at you, but I'll get to them in a minute. New Hyrule's economy must depend on trains, much like how the Great Sea depended on sailing. I'm fascinated by how people live in Hyrule, especially when you have Link coming into people's houses and destroying every pot they have just to get some goodies. So overall, the presentation is neither better nor worse than Phantom Hourglass, it's on the same level. What I will say, I do like the character's emotions, it suits this iteration of Link and Zelda quite well. Control layout is the same as Phantom Hourglass. You move Link with the stylus pen, you use his items with the stylus pen. In fact, there's really no need to get into so much detail this time. I'll cover the items as we go. There are unique items. One thing I got obsessed with doing was getting all the stamp stations. It was fun to be able to mark all the locations you've been to. It made Link and Zelda feel like real explorers. So I got nothing much to say about the main gameplay, it's largely unchanged. The layout is also the same. There's a main dungeon you visit, the Tower of Spirits. The Tower of Spirits is a huge improvement over the Ocean King's Temple, for one main reason. Once you finish exploring a floor and unlocking a piece of the tablet for the area you have to go to, you're done. You don't have to go back into that floor again unless you want to go back and get a treasure that you were unable to get because you didn't have the right item at the time, which is totally optional. The main gimmick of this dungeon is that while you have the phantoms chasing after you, if Link can power up his sword and strike them in the back, Zelda will take control of the phantom, and this is useful for many reasons. One thing I gotta laugh at was using Zelda to distract the phantom so Link can sneak by. Best of all, there's no time limit. Hallelujah! What's great is that there's 4 types of phantoms who Zelda can possess, including the regular phantom. The Torch Phantom, which Zelda uses to light torches. The Warp Phantom, which allows Zelda to warp the phantom eyes. And finally the Wrecker Phantom, which allows Zelda to become a boulder. Yeah, blow them all away. I really do like how Zelda gets to give Link a hand this time. The train works the same way as the boat did in Phantom Hourglass. You trace a path that you want to go, and your train goes. You can only speed up or reverse your train, and what's annoying is that you have enemy trains that will try to stop you. You can fire back with cannonballs, but if you collide with them, it's an instant game over. Well, look on the bright side, Zelda. Link will be joining you shortly! What's also annoying is that if they are on the path you set for yourself, you'll have to quickly change course, which can throw you off, and make you have to go the long way around, which just wastes time. There is a fast travel system, but I'm not a fan of it. You have to shoot the gem with a cannonball, then blow the whistle and go through the portal. It was way easier in Phantom Hourglass where you just rode on the sleigh of the whirlpool you wanted to go to. This is the worst fast travel I've seen in a Zelda game so far. Generally, Link and Zelda will travel to the Sanctuary, where Link is taught a song, and let me tell you, this is my least favorite part of the game. Now, it's standard for a Zelda game to have songs for you to learn since as far back as Ocarina of Time. But what did you have to do there? You just press some buttons. That's it. That's all it should be. But here, you have to blow into the microphone at just the right time on the right colors. At first, this isn't too bad, but eventually it'll start skipping colors, and if your accuracy is even slightly off, it won't count. I spent a half hour on some of these. Apparently people who play the accordion are able to do these really easily. Well, I didn't do that as a kid. I was never a musical instrument guy. I'm glad Nintendo has relaxed these standards due to these complaints, and also because this stuff has made these kind of games really hard to transfer to other platforms. But now let's talk about the actual dungeons. The first one is the Forest Temple. The Forest Temple is once again the standard start dungeon. Of course, getting to it requires going through a maze in the Lost Woods. Even New Hyrule couldn't escape that for some reason. The Forest Temple is just your standard dungeon to open up. The item you get is the Whirlwind, which requires you to blow into your mic to get a key that's out of reach, so you better not have weak lungs. The sub-boss is Mafala. This time around, Link has to use the Whirlwind to launch the bubbles back at the boss so you can hit it. Nothing too noteworthy. The boss, Stagnox, makes use of both screens of the DS. Link has to blow away the gas around its weakness so you can be able to hit in the back. Then in his second phase, you just have to blow one of the bombs back at Stagnox to be able to damage him. Overall, it's a pretty standard boss battle.
In order to get to the Snow Temple, you have to navigate a blizzard which requires you to trace the path on the map so you don't get lost. Why is New Hyrule designed to frustrate you? I do like how it puts the Whirlwind to good use. The item you get is the Boomerang and works exactly the same way it did in Phantom Hourglass, which means you're going to be lighting torches. Overall, this dungeon is just a thing, but then comes the boss battle. Phrase. How do you pronounce that? Okay then. You have to rotate the ice fire or the regular fire to be able to damage him. It reminds me of Twin Rova. When he splits into little pieces of himself, you have to reunite them. Why does it feel like I've done this before? In the Ocean Temple, I must admit I'm impressed with the underwater visuals as you go to the temple. Shame my sound was glitching out during this part. The item you get is the whip, and well, I'll get to this thing in a second because this was the most annoying heart piece in the entire game. You fling it with your stylus pen. Eat your heart out, Indiana Jones. The boss, Phytops, also deals with both screens. Link has to use the whip to pull off the toxic bullets before attacking the eye. This reminds me of a boss in Skyward Sword, which we'll be getting to very shortly. So with that, another temple down. I think it's time I mentioned the most annoying heart piece in the entire game, the whip minigame. Link has to get to the top of the island in a certain amount of time, and your accuracy with the whip has to be perfect, or else you ain't getting it. This took way too many tries to beat. Now it's on to the Fire Temple, but for the record, this song was really annoying to get right. The Fire Temple is probably the most straightforward dungeon. You basically just travel around in carts and use the bow to hit things. The boss, Kragma, basically reminds me of one of the bosses in Twilight Princess. Link has to get in a cart and shoot the weak points, and you better get them all in one fell swoop or else you will lose the turn. The final dungeon is the Sand Dungeon. In this dungeon, Link will get the Sand Wand, which will let him raise the sand to a higher level, which makes good for platforming, but unfortunately it feels like a highly situational item, specifically for this dungeon. That being said, the boss battle is very trying, since Link has to use the Sand Wand at just the right moments to be able to do damage. This took quite a few tries, but in the end I managed to get it down and get the Bow of Light, which means it's time to confront Maldice. Before I cover the final boss and ending, I'll mention some of the stuff you can do in the overworld. You can collect Force Gems, Stamps, and Rabbits, which are kind of annoying to get. I even took the time to do this challenge dungeon where I fought Dark Link again. How wonderful. That reminds me, I need to try to beat Zelda 2 Dark Link legitimately. But now, let's cover the ending. So Link and the gang arrive in the Dark Realm, where you have to power up the train to destroy these demon trains, and if you fail, you have to do the whole thing all over again. No checkpoints here. So finally, Link and Zelda find the demon train. Like before, Link has to disable the demon train to be able to board it. I guess it's a nice way of getting the train in on the action one last time. The train has a giant face on it. Totally not Ganon, by the way. So Link and Zelda are given one final pep talk. Zelda asks Link what he intends to do after the battle is over. The answer has a minor effect on the ending and it doesn't really matter personally. So Link and Zelda must approach Zelda's body, using Phantom Zelda as a shield. Link must carefully make his way to Maldice. Cole can take control of Zelda, so you have to sever the bonds holding her. Once Zelda gets control of her body, you have to wait for the right moment. You have to wait for the right moment to shoot her with the light arrow. Link and Zelda end up back in the plains of Hyrule, but Zelda can't access her body. But Byrne is able to hold Maldice off, and Zelda is able to retake control of her body. Well, I noticed your hat just rose, Link. Makes me think something else also rose up. I'm sure Rule 34 had a field day with this. But Byrne is unfortunately killed. I would say it's an appropriate ending for him. He died redeeming himself. Cole gets taken as the vessel because evil is not a toy.
Like I keep saying, Malthus looks exactly like Ganon in some ways, so why was he not Ganon? The final battle begins. The first part, Link just has to protect Zelda from Malthus' attacks, and you can't even let one get to her, otherwise you have to start the whole process all over again. And once that's done... Oh no, not this, not again! Screw it! Okay, it's done. I don't ever have to do that again. Never again. I do like the use of both screens, as you have to make sure Malthus' back is facing Zelda, so she can hit him with the light arrow, then Link can damage him. Following that, I like the final blow because Link and Zelda do it together. Ongine, Burn, and the other spirits all ascend to a higher place of existence. Malthus is defeated, and Link and Zelda, at the end of the day, all they have left is each other. And the shippers went wild. So that's Zelda Spirit Tracks. In many ways, I find it a huge improvement over the Phantom Hourglass, which can be downright tedious to play. But this experiment for Zelda had largely run its course, and people were ready for the Wii to get its first full-blown Zelda, which reminds me, that's getting an HD remaster really soon. And it's the next Zelda game on my list. What perfect timing. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please hit that bell, like, and subscribe button. If you want updates, follow me on Twitter, Twitch, or join my Discord, which are provided in the description below. See you next time.